You believe you know what makes things happen. The flame melts the candle. The ball strikes another, and it moves. One thing causes another. It feels like common sense. It feels like truth. But in 1739, a 28-year-old Scotsman tore that certainty apart with logic, so sharp it still cuts today. David Hume showed the world that we never actually see causation. We only see events following events. And the mental process he went through to reach that conclusion will make you question everything you think you know about reality itself. Edinburgh, May 7th, 1711. Old calendar says April 26th. David Hume is born on the north side of the Lawn Market. His father, Joseph Home, dies when David is 2 years old. His mother, Catherine Falconer, raises 3 children alone. She comes from legal aristocracy. Sir David Falconer, president of the Scottish court. But money is scarce. The family estate at Ninewells in Berwickshire brings modest income. As the second son, David inherits almost nothing. His older brother John gets the land. David must find his own way. He enters Edinburgh University at age 12. Some sources say 10. Either way, younger than the typical 14. The boy studies Latin, Greek, history, literature, ancient philosophy, mathematics, natural philosophy. That last one means science, physics. Newton's laws still echo through European universities. The scientific method promises certainty, observation, measurement, prediction. Hume absorbs it all. His family pushes law. Both sides practiced it for generations. But Hume finds law nauseous. That is his word, nauseous. Instead, he devours Cicero and Virgil in secret. While pretending to study legal texts by Vogt and Vinius, he is actually consuming philosophy, reading everything, thinking constantly. Somewhere around age 18, in 1729, something breaks open in his mind. He describes it later as a new scene of thought. He never specifies what exactly triggered it. Scholars debate it still. Some think it was Francis Hutcheson's moral sense theory applied to understanding itself. Others point to his reading of Pierre Bayle's Skeptical Dictionary. Whatever it was, it consumes him. He writes that it inspires him to throw up every other pleasure or business to apply entirely to it. Total obsession. He plans a 10-year program of reading and writing. He wants to do for human behavior what Isaac Newton did for physics, build a science of the mind, map the laws of human nature, but the intensity breaks him. Within months, a coldness sets in. He calls it laziness of temper. It lasts 9 months. Then scurvy spots appear on his fingers. His physician diagnoses him with a disease of the learned, a nervous breakdown. In 1729, at 18 years old, David Hume collapses under the weight of his own ambition. His body and mind rebel. For several years, he struggles to recover. His health deteriorates further in 1731. Ravenous appetite, heart palpitations. He eats constantly. His frame transforms from tall, lean, and raw-boned to sturdy, robust, and healthful-like. Those are his exact words. He becomes known for obesity, for loving good port and cheese. He used them as philosophical metaphors. But beneath the physical changes, the intellectual fire still burns. If you value documented philosophy and revolutionary thinking like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, published February 26, 2001, and updated regularly, and the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy's extensive entries on Hume and causation, which compile peer-reviewed scholarship on his methodical approach to dismantling traditional metaphysics. Now back to the information. By 1734, Hume is 23. No income. No profession. No prospects. He tries working as a merchant's assistant in Bristol. It lasts months. Miserable. He needs somewhere cheap to live while he writes. Somewhere with books. He chooses France. He travels via Bristol to La Flèche in Anjou, a sleepy village on the Loire. Best known for its Jesuit college. René Descartes studied there a century earlier. So did Morin Mersenne. The college has an extensive library. 30,000 volumes waiting. Hume settles in. He has frequent discourse with the Jesuits. He baits them with arguments, testing their beliefs. He reads French continental authors, Nicolas Malebranche on perception, Jean-Baptiste Dubos on aesthetics, Pierre Bayle's Skeptical Encyclopedia, and he begins writing. At age 23, in 1734, David Hume starts composing a treatise of human nature. The title reveals his ambition, an attempt to introduce the experimental method of reasoning into moral subjects. Moral subjects means human nature, mind, behavior, knowledge. Hume wants to build empiricism into a complete system. He follows John Locke's rejection of innate ideas, follows George Berkeley's focus on perception. But he goes further, harder, more radical. He asks the question that philosophers before him dodged. If all knowledge comes from experience, what exactly do we experience when we think we see causation? Here is where the mental process begins. The systematic dismantling. Hume starts with a simple observation. When you see one billiard ball strike another and the second ball moves, what do you actually perceive? You see the first ball moving toward the second. You see them collide. You see the second ball begin to move. 3 separate events. Event 1, first ball approaches. Event 2, contact. Event 3, second ball moves. That is all you see. You do not see any power. You do not see any force. You do not see the first ball causing the second to move. You see B following A. You do not see A causing B. This insight is devastating. Hume realizes that in every supposed causal relationship, all we ever observe is constant conjunction, one event followed by another, over and over. The flame touches the wax melts. Flame, melting. Flame, melting. 100 times, 1,000, but we never perceive the necessary connection between them. We never see the cause itself, only the pattern, the sequence, the regular succession. Hume writes it clearly in Book 1, Part 3, Section 2 of the treatise, published in 1739. He says, motion in the second billiard ball is a quite distinct event from motion in the first. There is nothing in the one to suggest the smallest hint of the other. Even suppose motion in the second ball should by accident be suggested to you as the result of their contact or impulse. May you not conceive that 100 different events might as well follow from that cause? The ball could stop, it could shatter, it could bounce backward, it could vanish. None of these violates logic. You can imagine them without contradiction, therefore they are metaphysically possible. And if they are possible, then the connection between cause and effect is not logically necessary. This is the first key move. Hume separates 2 kinds of knowledge: relations of ideas versus matters of fact. Relations of ideas include mathematics and logic. 2 plus 2 equals 4. A triangle has 3 sides. These are necessarily true. Their opposites are contradictions. Impossible to conceive, but matters of fact are different. The sun rose yesterday. The flame melts wax. These could be otherwise. Their opposites involve no contradiction. The sun not rising is conceivable. The wax not melting is conceivable. Therefore, no matter of fact can be known with absolute certainty through reason alone. And causation lives entirely in the realm of matters of fact, which means causation cannot be proven by reason, cannot be deduced a priori, cannot be known before experience. Hume makes this explicit. He argues at Treatise 133 that whatever begins to exist must have a cause of existence is not a logically necessary principle. You can conceive any object being non-existent this moment and existent the next, without conjoining to it the distinct idea of a cause or productive principle. The mind can always conceive any effect to follow from any cause. We can imagine ball B remaining motionless, ball A coming to a complete stop, both balls shattering. These possibilities are not logically impossible. Pure reason using logic alone cannot figure out what will happen. This is the problem of induction. Hume asks, what justifies our belief that the future will resemble the past? We have seen the sun rise every day of our lives. We therefore believe it will rise tomorrow. But this inference is not logical. It assumes that the course of nature continues always uniformly the same, that instances of which we have had no experience must resemble those of which we have had experience. But this principle itself cannot be proven. You cannot use experience to justify the uniformity of experience. That is circular reasoning. You cannot use logic because the opposite is conceivable. There is no logical contradiction in the sun not rising tomorrow. It would surprise us, shock us, but it would not violate reason. So where does our idea of causation come from? If we never perceive necessary connection in the world, if reason cannot prove it, what is the source of this powerful conviction we all feel? Hume's answer is revolutionary. The idea comes from within us, from our own minds, from habit and custom. Watch the process. You see flame touch wax. Wax melts. You see it again. Flame. Melting. Again. Flame. Melting. Each time your mind forms an association, the impressions become linked. After sufficient repetition, seeing the flame automatically makes you think of melting. The transition becomes automatic, customary. And this customary transition in the imagination feels like necessity. The habit of expecting B after A creates the impression of necessary connection. But the necessity is in your head, not in the objects themselves. Hume locates the crucial impression in Book 1, Part 3, Section 14, published 1739. He says the customary transition of the imagination from one object to its usual attendant is what generates our idea of necessary connection. when we observe constant conjunction repeatedly. Our mind develops a determination to carry thought from one object to another. This determination is the impression from which we derive the idea of power or necessary connection, not an external sensory impression, an internal impression of reflection. The feeling of being mentally compelled to make the inference, this is mind-bending. Hume is saying causation as we understand it is a projection. We experience repeated constant conjunction. A follows B, a follows B, a follows B. Our minds form habits. These habits feel necessary. We then project this felt necessity back onto the objects and think the necessity resides in them, but it does not. The billiard balls have no causal power in themselves. They just move in patterns. Our minds supply the glue, the connection, the must. To make this concrete, Hume offers two definitions of cause at Treatise 1.3.14.31. Definition 1, an object precedent and contiguous to another, and where all the objects resembling the former are placed in like relations of precedency and contiguity to those objects that resemble the latter. Translation: a cause is an event that comes before and is next to an effect, and all similar cause events are followed by similar effect events. This is the objective definition. What we can observe in the world: priority in time, proximity in space, constant conjunction, nothing more. Definition 2, an object precedent and contiguous to another, and so united with it that the idea of the one determines the mind to form the idea of the other, and the impression of the one to form a more lively idea of the other. Translation: a cause is an event that makes our mind automatically think of another event. This is the subjective definition. What happens in our minds, the psychological compulsion, the mental habit. These definitions strip causation down to its bones. No mysterious powers. No hidden forces, no metaphysical necessity, just observable patterns plus mental habits. Reductionism taken to its limit, and Hume knows how radical this is. He knows it undermines the foundations of natural philosophy, of science itself, because science assumes causal laws, assumes regularities will continue, assumes we can reason from effects to causes. But if causation is just constant conjunction plus habit, what justifies these assumptions? The answer is, nothing justifies them rationally. We cannot prove by logic that nature is uniform. We cannot use experience to prove experience is reliable. Induction has no rational foundation. We make causal inferences because we are psychologically built to do so, because our minds form habits automatically when we observe repeated patterns, not because reason demands it, not because the world contains necessary connections we perceive, because our nervous systems generate expectations through association and repetition. This is Hume's naturalism. He treats belief in causation like an instinct, a product of our animal nature, unavoidable, ineliminable. We cannot stop believing in causes even after we recognize we have no rational justification for doing so, just as we cannot stop believing in the external world even though we only ever perceive our own ideas. The beliefs arise from the construction of our minds. For mechanisms deeper than reason, custom and habit govern us more than logic ever could. The implications cascade. Proofs of God, relying on causation, collapse. The cosmological argument fails. Hume shows that whatever begins to exist must have a cause is not necessarily true. At Treatise 1.3.3, he demolishes the principle of sufficient reason, Leibniz's foundation. The ideas of cause and effect are evidently distinct. We can conceive an object being non-existent one moment and existent the next without any cause. The design argument fares no better. We infer an intelligent designer from order in nature, but this assumes uniformity of nature, cannot be proven. We observe neither God nor other universes. No observed constant conjunction means no basis for causal inference to God as a designer. Hume develops this in Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion, published posthumously in 1779. Rationalist metaphysics crumbles too. Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz claim to know ultimate reality a priori. Through pure reason, Hume shows this is impossible. All knowledge comes from experience. Experience gives us only impressions and ideas, never necessary connections. Metaphysics. Claiming deep truths beyond experience is unintelligible. These airy sciences are smokescreens for popular superstitions. Hume completes the treatise by autumn 1737. He returns to London to find a publisher. It takes nearly a year. Book 1 and Book 2 are published together in January 1739. Book 3 appears in November 1740. The reception is crushing. In Hume's famous words, "Never literary event was more unfortunate than my treatise." It fell dead-born from the press without reaching such distinction as even to excite a murmur among the zealots. He is 28 years old. He has spent years in intellectual obsession, suffered a nervous breakdown, lived in poverty abroad. produced what he believes is a revolutionary philosophical system, and almost nobody reads it. The few reviews that appear are harsh. The History of the Works of the Learned publishes a succession of sarcastic comments. They mock his style, his pretensions, his skepticism. The work does attract some murmur from zealots. Religious opponents notice his rejection of miracles, his attack on the argument from design, his skeptical treatment of personal identity and the soul. These passages ensure his lifelong reputation as an atheist and a skeptic. When he applies for the chair of ethics and pneumatical philosophy at Edinburgh in 1745, vocal opposition prevents his appointment. 6 years later, in 1751, he tries for the chair of logic at Glasgow. Turned down again. David Hume never holds an academic post, never becomes a professor. The establishment rejects him, but rejection does not stop him. He recognizes that the treatise has problems, not of content, but of style. Too dense, too technical, too ambitious in scope. So he recasts the material, makes it more accessible, more popular. In 1748, an inquiry concerning human understanding appears. This is the second major presentation of his causal theory. Sections 4 and 5 handle the problem. Section 4, skeptical doubts concerning the operations of the understanding. Section 5, skeptical solution of these doubts. The titles reveal his strategy. First, raise the doubt, then provide the naturalistic solution. The inquiry version refines the treatise argument. Hume emphasizes that his question is not whether the concept of cause is correct or usable or indispensable for knowledge of nature. He never doubts that. His question is whether the concept is thought by reason a priori, whether it has inner truth independent of all experience, whether it extends beyond objects of experience. The answer to all three is no. Causation is not a priori, it has no necessity independent of experience, and it cannot ground inferences beyond experience to things like God or the soul. The inquiry does better. Gets translated. A German translation appears in 1755. German philosophers read it. Immanuel Kant encounters Hume's skepticism, writes in the Prolegomena to Any Future Metaphysics, published in 1783. I freely admit that it was the remembrance of David Hume which many years ago first interrupted my dogmatic slumber. Hume showed Kant that the causal principle cannot be proven by pure reason. This forces Kant to develop his critical philosophy. The critique of pure reason emerges from grappling with Hume's challenge. Jeremy Bentham reads Hume and says reading him caused the scales to fall from his eyes. Adam Smith is Hume's close friend. Smith's economic writings draw on Hume's essays. The entire Scottish Enlightenment revolves around Hume's orbit. But return to the mental process, to the method Hume uses to reach his conclusions. It is empiricism taken to its limit. Start with experience. Ask what impressions we actually have. Distinguish simple from complex. Trace every idea to its corresponding impression. If no impression exists, the idea is meaningless. This is the copy principle. Every simple idea is copied from a simple impression. No impression, no idea, no experience, no knowledge. Apply this ruthlessly to causation. We claim to have an idea of necessary connection. Where's the impression? Look at the billiard balls. You see motion, contact, more motion. Where's the necessity? Not there. Look inside your mind when you expect the second ball to move. There is the impression. The feeling of determination, the customary transition. That is the source, not the objects. The mind. This method is modeled on Newtonian science. Newton's third rule of reasoning says that qualities found universally in our experience can be extended to all bodies. Hume applies this to mental phenomena. Observed constant conjunctions become habits. Habits become expectations. Expectations feel necessary. This psychological mechanism operates universally in human nature. Therefore, causation as we understand it is a feature of how minds work, not a feature of external reality. The radicalism lies in the consistency. Hume does not flinch. He follows his principles wherever they lead, even when they lead to skepticism, even when they undermine science itself. He shows that inductive reasoning has no rational foundation, that we cannot prove nature is uniform, that causal necessity is a projection of our minds, and he accepts these conclusions, does not try to paper them over, does not retreat to common sense like Thomas Reid later does. Hume looks at the abyss and describes what he sees. But then comes the naturalistic turn, the recognition that skeptical doubts do not and cannot govern life. We are built to believe in causes, built to make inductions, built to trust our senses. These beliefs arise from instinct, from imagination, from the passions, not from reason. Reason alone would leave us paralyzed, unable to act, unable to predict, unable to survive. But nature does not leave us to reason alone. It gives us custom and habit, automatic associations. psychological compulsions that reason cannot remove even when reason recognizes their lack of foundation. This is Hume's mitigated skepticism, radical in theory, moderate in practice. He shows that our most basic beliefs cannot be rationally justified. But he also shows that we cannot help holding them, that they are part of our nature. The solution is to accept our limits. Stop pretending reason can deliver metaphysical certainty. Stop building grand systems claiming to reveal ultimate reality. Instead, study human nature empirically. Map our mental mechanisms. Understand how a belief formation actually works. Build a science of the mind. The treatise book, 1 Part 3, spans sections 1 through 16, over 100 pages in modern editions. The longest sustained treatment of causation in the Western philosophical canon. Hume examines knowledge and probability, the nature of causal inference, the idea of necessary connection, rules by which to judge of causes and effects. He considers objections, anticipates replies, builds the argument step by step, uses examples throughout, billiard balls, flames and wax, bread and nourishment, past experience of objects similar in appearance producing similar effects. The constant conjunction creates the habit creates the expectation. The expectation feels necessary. He addresses whether animals reason from causes to effects. They do. A dog avoids fire after being burned. A horse stops at a cliff edge. These animals make causal inferences, but they cannot reason abstractly. Therefore, their causal inferences must arise from instinct, from custom, from experience-producing automatic associations. And if animals make causal inferences without reason, so do humans. Our reasoning is just more complex, but fundamentally the same mechanism. Association through custom. Hume also considers the distinction between reasoning concerning quantity or number versus reasoning concerning matters of fact. Mathematics is demonstrative. Geometry proves theorems. Algebra solves equations. These sciences attain certainty because they concern relations of ideas. They operate through intuition and demonstration, but all reasoning concerning matters of fact is founded on the relation of cause and effect, and that relation cannot be discovered by reason a priori. We need experience. Observation. Constant conjunction. Without experience of how objects have behaved in the past, we can form no conclusion about how they will behave in the future. This leads to the famous problem. We observe that events of type A have always been followed by events of type B. We infer that the next A will be followed by B. But this inference assumes nature is uniform, that the future resembles the past. This assumption is not logically necessary. It is not intuitively certain. It cannot be demonstrated. And it cannot be supported by probable reasoning because all probable reasoning already assumes the uniformity principle. Using probable reasoning to prove the uniformity principle is circular. Therefore, the foundation of all reasoning about matters of fact cannot itself be rationally justified. Some say this makes Hume a skeptic about causation, that he denies causal relations exist, but this misreads him. Hume does not deny causation, he redefines it, strips away the metaphysical baggage, shows that causation consists in observable priority, contiguity, and constant conjunction, plus the mind's customary determination to infer effect from cause. This is causation, nothing more mysterious, nothing more. The regularity view of causation. Cause means events of one type are constantly conjoined with events of another type, and this conjunction produces a habit in us. This regularity view becomes hugely influential. John Stuart Mill adopts it, calls it the uniformity of nature, makes it the foundation of his logic. The logical positivists embrace it, define empirical laws as regularities. Whenever C, then E, all C's are as, universal generalizations. Nothing about hidden powers or necessary connections, just patterns. Bertrand Russell takes it further, declares the notion of cause obsolete. Science needs only functional relationships, mathematical equations, not causal powers. Hume's reductionism reaches its limit in Russell's elimination, but others resist. Kant argues that causation must be a priori if experience is to be possible at all, that the mind imposes causal categories on experience, that without causal structure, we could not have coherent experience of an objective world. This is the transcendental argument, not about what we observe, but about the conditions necessary for observation itself. Hume would reply that this still does not give us knowledge of things in themselves, only knowledge of how our minds necessarily structure experience. The Kantian compromise. 20th century philosophy wrestles with Hume's legacy. Logical empiricists analyze causation in terms of laws and regularities. Counterfactual theorists use possible worlds. Causal realists insist there are genuine causal powers in nature. The debate continues. No consensus. Hume set the terms. Everyone responds to him. Consider what he accomplished. At 23, in a French village, working alone, Hume dismantles 2,000 years of metaphysics. Shows we cannot know reality as it is, cannot prove God exists, cannot justify induction, cannot perceive necessary connections. Our most basic beliefs rest on instinct and habit, not reason. Through careful analysis, through rigorous application of empirical method, through refusing to accept what cannot be derived from impressions. He does this while recovering from a nervous breakdown, while living in poverty, while dealing with bad health. Physical suffering accompanies intellectual breakthrough. Yet he persists, produces over 500 pages of dense philosophical argument, all by age 26. The publication happens slowly. Books 1 and 2 in 1739, Book 3 in 1740. Hume is nervous about reception. He has already deleted controversial material, castrated his manuscript. In his words, removed discussions of miracles and other nobler parts. Trying to avoid offense, trying to gain favorable notice, it does not work. The book falls dead-born from the press. Almost no one reads it. Almost no one understands it. The few who do attack it as skepticism and atheism. Think about this moment. You are 28, 10 years on a project. It is ignored, dismissed, attacked. Hume writes essays, lighter pieces. Essays, moral and political, in 1741 and 1742 succeed. People read them. He gains reputation as an essayist, but he does not abandon philosophy. The Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding in 1748. The Inquiry Concerning the Principles of Morals in 1751. Both represent treatise material. Stripped down, clearer, more focused. These succeed better, circulate widely, get translated. By the 1750s, Hume's philosophical reputation is established, controversial but known, discussed, taken seriously. Meanwhile, he needs money, accepts positions as tutor, secretary, librarian, takes the post of Keeper of the Advocates Library in Edinburgh in 1752, access to 30,000 volumes. Here he writes his History of England, 6 volumes published between 1754 and 1762. This becomes his great success. The book sells widely. Remains the standard history for decades. Makes him famous as a historian. Yet the philosophical impact grows. The Inquiry translation into German in 1755 spreads his ideas. Kant reads it by the mid-1760s. The awakening from dogmatic slumber begins. By 1779, not 3 years after Hume's death, Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion appears. His final philosophical work, withheld during his life to avoid offense, an extended critique of arguments for God's existence. The design argument dissected, shown inadequate. Natural theology questioned from every angle. 3 characters debate: Philo, the skeptic; Clynthes, the natural theologian; Demea, the orthodox believer. Most readers see Hume in Philo, the skeptical voice, questioning, undermining, never quite affirming, never quite denying. Mitigated skepticism in dialogue form. Hume dies on August 25th, 1776. He is 65, suffers some disorder of the bowels, probably cancer. He faces death calmly. Adam Smith visits him near the end. Later writes that Hume was as cheerful and as full of spirits as ever, joking about excuses he might give Karen the ferryman to delay crossing the river, wanting to see how the public receives a new work, wanting to witness the downfall of superstition. But Karen will not wait. Hume accepts it, faces death without anxiety or regret. His words, "This calmness shocks religious observers. They expect the great skeptic to recant on his deathbed, to fear damnation. Instead, he dies peacefully, smiling, unafraid." It is perhaps the ultimate demonstration of his philosophy in practice. Custom and nature govern even death. No supernatural terrors, just the natural end of a life fully lived. The legacy is immense. Jerry Fodor calls the treatise the foundational document of cognitive science. Isaiah Berlin says, "No man has influenced philosophy more deeply." The empiricist tradition flows through Hume. Mill and Russell follow. Logical positivism builds on him. Kant's critical philosophy responds to Humean skepticism. Reid's common sense philosophy is explicitly anti-Humean, and causation remains central. The problem persists. Responses multiply. Kant's transcendental categories, Mill's inductive methods, Popper's falsificationism, Bayesian confirmation theory. Each attempts to salvage scientific reasoning from Humean skepticism. None commands universal assent. The problem of induction remains unsolved. We continue making inferences, continue believing nature is uniform, but cannot prove we are justified. Hume showed that the showing remains valid. Return to the mental process one more time. How does someone reach conclusions this radical? By taking principles seriously. Hume commits to empiricism, all ideas from impressions. He follows through, examines every idea, traces each to its source. When he cannot find an impression for necessary connection in external objects, he looks elsewhere, finds it in internal experience, the feeling of mental determination. This is honest inquiry, not defending a position, not supporting a conclusion decided in advance, following the method wherever it leads, and it requires intellectual courage. To question what everyone assumes, to show that common beliefs lack rational foundation, to face the possibility that human knowledge rests on instinct rather than reason, this threatens our self-image. We think ourselves rational creatures, guided by logic and evidence. Hume shows we are creatures of habit and custom. That reason plays a smaller role than we think, that passions and sentiments drive most of our thinking and action, that reason is, and ought only to be, the slave of the passions. This is humbling, disturbing, difficult to accept. Yet Hume never becomes a nihilist, never rejects knowledge altogether. His skepticism is mitigated, moderated by recognition of human nature. We cannot help believing in causes, cannot help making inductions, cannot help trusting our senses. These beliefs are natural, unavoidable, useful. We should accept them while recognizing their lack of rational justification, should stop demanding what reason cannot provide, should embrace our nature as it is. This is the mature Humean position, skeptical about metaphysics, naturalistic about human nature, moderate in practice. The treatise includes rules by which to judge of causes and effects. 8 rules total. They systematize causal reasoning. Rule 1, cause and effect must be contiguous in space and time. Rule 2, the cause must be prior to the effect. Rule 3, constant union between cause and effect. These rules show Hume does not reject causation in practice. Only metaphysical necessity, only claims to perceive causal power. Scientists can still discover causes through constant conjunction, contiguity, priority, through experimentation, all valid on Hume's account. This makes Hume the patron saint of science as we practice it. Science discovers regularities, patterns, laws as descriptions. We test them by observation, modify when we find exceptions, refine through experiment. This is empirical science, requires no metaphysics, no causal powers, just observation and generalization. Consider the implications for theology. The cosmological proof argues from the existence of the world to a first cause, but Hume shows that whatever begins to exist must have a cause is not necessarily true. The proof fails. The design argument infers an intelligent designer from apparent design, but this assumes uniformity of nature, cannot be proven, requires observation of many universes created by designers. We have one universe, no designers observed, no constant conjunction, no basis for inference to God. The argument fails. This leaves only faith. Hume accepts this, says he attacks only pretensions to prove religion through reason. Faith and reason are separate. Trying to rationally prove what can only be believed leads to bad arguments. Better to recognize the limits of reason. The mental process that leads to these conclusions combines several elements: intense focus, willingness to question everything, systematic application of empirical method, logical rigor, intellectual honesty, following arguments wherever they lead, and naturalism. Taking humans as natural creatures, studying how we actually think rather than how we ought to think by some abstract standard. This combination produces revolutionary results, changes philosophy, changes how we think about knowledge, changes our self-understanding as knowers. And it starts with one question. What do we actually experience when we think we see causation? The answer dismantles centuries of assumptions, shows that necessary connection is a projection of our minds, that causation consists in constant conjunction plus habit, that induction lacks rational foundation, that metaphysics claiming to transcend experience is meaningless, all from asking what impression corresponds to the idea of necessary connection, all from taking the copy principle seriously, all from empiricism pursued to its logical conclusion. David Hume spent his life developing and defending these ideas, suffered for them, never gained the academic position he sought, faced religious opposition, experienced harsh criticism, yet persisted, kept writing, kept clarifying, kept arguing. The treatise at 26, the inquiries in his 30s, the dialogues held back until after death, essays and history bringing popular success but never abandoning philosophy, never recanting, never softening the hard conclusions, maintaining mitigated skepticism to the end. The treatise, Book 1. Part 3. Section 14 contains the 2 definitions of cause. These capture everything we mean by causation without appealing to anything beyond experience. Definition 1, priority, contiguity, constant conjunction, what we observe. Definition 2, the mental determination, what we feel. Together they constitute the complete Humean account. Causation is regular succession producing habitual inference in minds that observe the succession. Nothing more, nothing less. Scholars debate whether Hume gives primacy to one definition, whether he is a reductionist, reducing causation to mere regularity, whether he is a skeptical realist, whether he is a projectivist, projecting necessity onto regularities. The text supports multiple interpretations. Hume offers both definitions, says both are accurate, says both are somewhat unsatisfying, admits no remedy is possible. This is the best we can do. Mystery remains even after analysis. This humility distinguishes Hume. He does not pretend to final answers, does not claim his system solves all problems, admits his definitions leave something wanting, admits we wish for more, but insists we cannot have it, cannot perceive necessary connections, cannot prove induction, must accept our nature as it is. This modesty paired with radicalism creates his distinctive voice, radical in tearing down metaphysical pretensions, modest in acknowledging the limits of what he can build in their place. The process of reaching these conclusions involves years of thought. Starts with the new scene at 18, continues through the breakdown and recovery, intensifies in France, crystallizes in writing the treatise, gets refined in the inquiry, extends in the dialogues, a lifetime working through implications. The early obsession matures, becomes more controlled, more articulate. But the same questions drive him from 18 to 65. What can we know? How do we know it? What are the limits of human understanding? And the contribution matters because the questions matter. We still ask them, still struggle with them. Hume's answers may not be final, but they are honest, rigorous. They follow from clearly stated principles, do not hide difficulties. Hume shows us what we can and cannot know if we take experience as our only source, shows us the gap between belief and proof, shows us that much of what we take for granted rests on instinct rather than reason. Uncomfortable, disturbing, but probably true. La ciencia cognitiva moderna respalda las ideas de Hume. La investigación demuestra que la asociación a través de la repetición crea expectativas. Las redes neuronales se forman mediante patrones repetidos. Los animales y los humanos aprenden las causas a través del condicionamiento. El mecanismo que describe Hume se corresponde con el fortalecimiento sináptico y el reconocimiento de patrones. La ciencia de la mente que él vislumbró es ahora una realidad. Confirma en gran medida su relato. Somos criaturas de la costumbre. La asociación nos gobierna. La pieza final es la aceptación. Hume acepta sus conclusiones incluso cuando conducen al escepticismo. La inducción no puede justificarse, por lo que sus propios argumentos basados en patrones carecen de fundamento racional. Él lo admite, lo afronta. Dice que las dudas escépticas no admiten respuesta y no producen convicción. No podemos refutarlas racionalmente, pero no podemos evitar creer. No podemos evitar razonar inductivamente. Esto es la naturaleza humana. Así que Hume vive con la tensión. Sabe que sus creencias carecen de justificación racional. Las mantiene de todos modos. Actúa basándose en ellas. Razona de las causas a los efectos. Todo mientras sabe que no puede demostrar que estas expectativas estén justificadas. Esto es madurez intelectual. Reconocer que la razón tiene límites, que debemos vivir por algo más que solo la razón. La filosofía no puede cambiar esto, solo puede hacernos conscientes de ello. En 1734, en un colegio jesuita en Francia, un escocés de 23 años, llamado David Hume, comenzó a escribir un libro que cambiaría la filosofía para siempre. Se preguntó qué experimentamos realmente cuando observamos causas. Descubrió que solo experimentamos una conjunción constante. Eventos que siguen a eventos. Nunca la necesidad, nunca la conexión. Eso solo existe en nuestras mentes, producido por el hábito, por la costumbre, por la asociación repetida. Esta simple observación hace estallar siglos de metafísica. Muestra que la causalidad, tal como la entendemos, es en parte nuestra proyección, que la conexión necesaria es un sentimiento, no un hecho, que la inducción no puede justificarse racionalmente. Todo nuestro conocimiento científico se basa en cimientos que no podemos probar. Creemos de todos modos, debemos creer, estamos hechos para creer, pero sabemos que no podemos probar. Esta es la revolución, no solo en lo que creemos sobre la causalidad, sino en cómo pensamos sobre el pensamiento mismo. Hume demuestra que la razón no es soberana, que la costumbre y el instinto gobiernan la mayor parte de la vida humana, que la tarea de la filosofía no es probar verdades metafísicas más allá de la experiencia, sino mapear los límites del entendimiento, distinguir lo que podemos saber de lo que simplemente creemos, aceptar la naturaleza humana tal como es, en lugar de pretender que es otra cosa, Este giro naturalista da forma a toda la filosofía posterior a él. Kant responde. Mill responde. Todos responden. Algunos están de acuerdo. Algunos rechazan. Nadie lo ignora. Porque Hume hizo la pregunta correcta. Dio una respuesta honesta. Y la siguió hasta el final. Ese es el proceso mental. Preguntar qué experimentamos realmente. Rastrear las ideas hasta las impresiones. Aceptar los resultados por muy inquietantes que sean. Vivir con ellos. Esto es coraje intelectual. Esto es honestidad filosófica. Este es David Hume. En 2009, el estudio de la Universidad de Kiel sobre la memoria reconstructiva encontró que los patrones que Hume identificó en 1739 todavía rigen cómo los cerebros forman expectativas causales. La transición habitual que describió coincide con lo que ahora llamamos aprendizaje asociativo. La conjunción constante crea vías neuronales. La activación repetida fortalece las conexiones. La mente hace exactamente lo que Hume dijo que hace. Forma hábitos a partir de patrones. Proyecta necesidad sobre las regularidades. Cree en las causas porque está construida para creer. La ciencia se pone al día 2 siglos y medio después. Demuestra que tenía razón. El proceso mental por el que pasó para comprender la causalidad describió con precisión cómo funcionan realmente los procesos mentales. Mapeó la mente examinando su propia mente. Generalizó a partir de un caso. Confió en que la naturaleza humana es lo suficientemente uniforme como para que lo que es cierto para él sea cierto para otros. El método funcionó. Las conclusiones se mantienen. La revolución continúa. Cada vez que alguien pregunta qué justifica el razonamiento científico, la respuesta de Hume resuena. Costumbre y hábito. Experiencia que produce expectativa. No es posible ninguna prueba racional. No se necesita ninguna prueba. La naturaleza se encarga de ello. Creemos porque debemos, porque estamos construidos de esa manera. Acéptalo. Vive con ello. Deja de exigir lo que la razón no puede dar. Esta es la lección. Esto es lo que enseña el proceso mental. La realidad no es lo que dice el sentido común. La causalidad no es lo que parece. El conocimiento se basa más en el instinto que en la razón, y podemos vivir con eso. Debemos vivir con eso. Hume nos mostró cómo.